Okay, everybody, good evening. Two things before we start. First, a couple of years ago, I have a friend whose father had passed away, and there was no one saying Kaddish. And I took upon myself for the year to say Kaddish, and this week will be the end of the week will be his yard site. So the classes I teach this week will be Ilu Nishmato Yitzchak Meshulam Ben Perla Zichrono Livracha. Neshama should have an aliyah for all the Torah we learn in this class and the other classes I teach this week. Chodesh Tov to everybody. Chodesh, now it's officially Adar Sheni. Yesterday, today, last night was the last day of Adar Rishon. I sent out a note, some of you may have seen before the class, that in the last few hours, the last couple of days, I've had a couple people, more than a couple of people, approach me with the topic of Sudat Purim this year in light of the current situation, the war, Hatufim, those who've been kidnapped. So I decided, instead of responding to each one individually, to kind of just put just a couple of minutes at the beginning of this class tonight to give you my thoughts. What I will say is absolutely not halacha. It's what's called hashkafa, philosophical thoughts, ideas, because there's no halacha in this particular situation, other than you have a mitzvah to have a Sudat Purim. The question, of course, becomes, how do we have Sudat Purim in this particular time period, which is all, and the whole Chag, the whole holiday, it's not really a Chag, it's in quotes, the holiday of Purim, where it's all joy and merriment and happiness and a little bit of drinking. I stress the word little, in light of the fact that we're in the middle of a war, and we have many of our brothers and sisters are still being held captive in Gaza. And we have billions of people on earth who hate us and want us dead. And we have some of our, so to speak, close friends in other countries who would just as soon throw us under the bus as well. So how do we celebrate? So first of all, we know that it says that in halacha, in the beginning of the halachot, or the month of Adar, Misha Nichnas Adar Marbin Besimcha, that when we're in the month of Adar, when it enters, you're supposed to increase joy. And when you're in the month of Av, Mima'atin Besimcha, you decrease joy. But that means that there's always some joy in life, that it has to be increased or decreased depending on the time period that we're in. We're obviously in a very tough time right now. We're in a time where our achdut, our unity, is being tested. We're in a time where, for many people, their emunah is being tested, their faith in Hashem. We're in a time where people are anxious, stressed out, having a hard time sleeping, guilty. It's not an easy time. So how do we incorporate this concept of Simcha month, and especially when it comes to the day of Purim, and specifically Sudat Purim? So because we have a mitzvah, dirabanan, rabbinic mitzvah, to have a Sudan Purim, we have many mitzvot. We have the meal, we have mishloach manot, matanot le'avyonin, the Megillah twice, once at night, once by day. We can't just say, well, it's a war. We can't celebrate it all. It doesn't work that way at all. However, at the same time, I think we have to take into consideration that when we're having our Su'udah, when we're having our meal on Purim Day, that we can't lose sight of the fact that part of our simcha is tainted. Now, there's an absolute precedence for that. We look at the night 6 weeks from today, or 6 weeks from last night, 6 weeks from this Monday night, I think it is Pesach, is the Seder. And during the Seder, one of the things we do is we will take out some of the wine from our cups. During the mention of the Tzachadash Be'achav, the Rashi Tevot, or the initial letters of the 10 plagues, we will take them out for mentioning the 10 plagues, and Dam Ve'esh V'Timot Ashan, all these things that surround the deaths of the Egyptians, our mortal enemy at the time. And the idea, the theory being that, okay, that they were horrible, they're horrible people, but they were still God's creatures, and it lessens our simcha drop. The other side of the coin is, if we do that for our enemies, kal v'chomer for our family, our simcha can be a little bit, and should be, in my personal opinion, a little bit more reserved. If you drink on Purim in the past, you're allowed to drink. tell you not to drink, but it should be a little bit less, in my humble opinion. I'm only saying this not out of halacha, but and just taking into consideration where we are right now in our lives. The joy should still be there. We should make sure the children absolutely should not feel cheated out of Purim. You want to get in costume, get in costume. You want to, I would highly recommend staying away from any cap guns and any napatzin, the little things that the pop things. And I already know for a fact how that's already affected some people when a couple have gone off in the neighborhood already. But as far as the joyous aspect, you cannot just not have a meal. You can't say, I'm not having a Sudat Purim this year because the people are stuck in Gaza and people are dying and everything else. You can't do that. You can't just throw mitzvah out the window, but you can temper it. And in my humble opinion, I think that would be the proper course of action. Again, I'm not giving you any specific guidelines. I can't. It's a feeling thing. It's a hashkafic. It's a philosophical approach. It's not a matter of halacha. No one is going to tell you that you have to do this or you shouldn't do this at all. I'm only giving you what I believe should be a bit of a guidance in tempering the mitzvah, the Suda. And whether you temper it, you don't temper it, you want to make it just perfectly normal or different. I think it behooves every single one of us at the Sudat Purim to pause for a moment and mention. You could say Tehillim, you could say the Tefilla for the Chatufim and for the Psuim, for the injured. You could say whatever you want, but it should be mentioned. It should be incorporated into your Purim Suda at some point. Okay. If you have further questions, topic you want to discuss, please be in touch with me after the class and be happy to talk to you before Purim. Okay, we're going to move now back into the first paragraph of Shema. We're going to finish that up, talk about a few points. The question, let me get this on the screen here. We're going to talk for just a couple of minutes about this idea. V'dibarta bam. It says over here, V'shinantam levanecha. We discussed last week. You should teach them diligent to your children. It should be a matter of repetition. They should feel comfortable with Torah and learning and repeating, and each child to his or her level. And again, that means adult children too. V'dibarta bam. You should speak about them. You should talk in Torah. When you're lying, when you're sitting in your house, when you're going on the way. This is where we left off last week. I just make a comment. It's actually based on this Gemara over here. It says as follows. Not a Gemara, it's a Mishnah. Mishnah says as follows. Rabbi Yaakov, interesting. Okay, so there's actually two girsaot. I see that the English has one girsa, one version, and the Hebrew has one. One says Rabbi Shimon, one says Rabbi Yaakov. We're going to go with Rabbi Yaakov because I think that's the more, if I remember right, the more correct one. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, Hamahalech baderech v'shoneh. If a person is doing the mitzvah, he's walking, he's going out, he's talking in Torah. Umafsik mishnato ve'omer, and he stops his learning and says, he happens to see a beautiful tree, a beautiful something, and says, Mana'e ilan zeh. How beautiful is this tree? How beautiful is this field? That the Torah looks at him as if he has put his soul in danger. Or what does it say here? He's mortally guilty. Now, that's pretty sharp stuff. That's really strong. So you mean to tell me, if I'm sitting outside learning and I look up and say, wow, what a beautiful sunset. Or I walk down the street and I'm talking to someone about a question, and we stop and say, wow, just look at that beautiful tree. That mitchayev v'nafshi, that I'm mortally in danger here. First of all, it doesn't any way, shape, or form mean that I'm liable to death penalty or something like that. God forbid. What does it really mean? It means that we're confusing the ikar and tafel. We're confusing the main thing and the secondary thing. Let me give you an example. It's actually based on an old joke, but it's very true, and I think it fits here. They tell the old joke of a person is a grandmother is sitting on a park bench and her grandchildren are playing in the park, and someone sits down next to her and says, wow, your grandchildren, they're so beautiful, Blian Hara. And she says, that's nothing. You should see their pictures, and takes out the pictures. So it's a joke, fine. But it's really the same idea here. The pictures are just a representation, a manifestation of the source. The source is the two grandchildren. The same thing is happening over here. If a person's learning Torah, which is the source for what we call nature, which is still Hashem, and he stops the source to look at and admire the beauty, then he is mistaken, and he has taken that which is the ikar, for learning the Torah at that moment, for the tafel, the secondary. That doesn't minimize the beauty, doesn't minimize that at all. Matter of fact, that we should do that at times. We talk about the idea that yirat Hashem is not just awe of God and fear of God, but I brought in proof that's something I've been saying for years, and I actually found a source for it. It's also to see, from the word lirot. It's not the same shoresh. Lirot et Hashem, to see Hashem and everything. That's also a very important thing. But you don't interrupt your Torah to do that. That's what we want to understand from this. The idea, by the way, of Shachar Kumecha has to do with where we get the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema in the morning and Kriyat Shema in the evening. We then say in the paragraph, go back, just have it in front of you, Ukshartam laot al yadecha, v'hayu latot tafot beninecha. You shall tie them upon a sign on your arm, and they should be for tot tafot. In English, they're translated as frontlets between your eyes. So we're going to talk about this just for a couple of minutes. This is one of the psukim I use to explain why we need Torah shebe'al peh, the oral law, because this sentence, this pasuk, is the source for tefillin, right? You should tie it as a sign on your arm, and for frontlets between your eyes. Assuming that's the only piece of information you had, and you said this is tefillin, you would have absolutely no idea what to do. Absolutely no. What sign? What are you supposed to do with it? Tie what around your arm? What do I mean frontlets? And what between your eyes mean over here, between your eyes, right there? So first of all, that last statement of what do you mean between your eyes? That's exactly what the Karaim, the Karaite Jews do. They take the Torah literally. They don't have a Torah shebe al peh, oral law, even though they technically do. And that the idea of beinei necha, we know is that the tefillin shel rosh goes up here, opposite the area between the eyes. The knot that goes in the back is directly, but the proper positioning of the knot behind the head would be if you were to, God forbid you should do it, but so to speak, bore a hole from one end to the other, it would be between your eyes as well. But why? Why do this? Just why can't you have one like a tefillah is singular? Tefillah shel rosh, tefillah shel yad. So they both have the same information inside. One has shel rosh has 4 sections with 4 parshiot, 4 sections of psukim from the Torah, and the shel yad has the same 4, but just on a scroll and not in 4. So we have the same information. So just have one. What is the yad? It represents our strength, our physical body. That we do mitzvot. It's our guf. Remember, we're made up of 2 parts. This is something within tefillah, and especially in learning, but especially learning tefillah, you should never forget we have 2 parts. We're made up of our physical body, our guf, and our spiritual being of our neshama, the chelek elokami ma'al, the literal piece of Hashem inside of each one of us, so that we are using and employing our physical body, our guf, to do the mitzvot and to serve Hashem. And we also, this is on our head. What's in our head is our brain. And our brain represents our sechel, our intellect. We serve Hashem with our mind. But if you should think for a moment that our arm, the tefillah on the arm, only represents the physical, understand that the proper positioning of the tefillin that goes on the shel yad here is it doesn't go on the top of the muscle. It goes a little bit further down, closer to the elbow, and it's angled a little bit towards the body, because when you put your arm down, then the tefillin actually is pointing to the heart, because it's also representing multiple things. The physical representation of serving Hashem with our arm, with our bodies, also with our heart, which we're going to come back to in a few minutes. And also on the head is the seichel, the intellect. So we don't serve Hashem only by doing a mitzvah. If I put on tefillin, or I put on a talit, or I light the Hanukkah lights, or whatever it might be, I've accomplished the mitzvah, whether I had any intention or not. Remember, we said with very few exceptions, like this, reading the words Shema Yisrael. If I don't have the intention to do the mitzvah, I still did the mitzvah. But you did it in the lowest possible way, which is why you should always have a thought before you do a mitzvah, that even if I don't have the right intention, let Hashem look at it as if I have the right intention. See Tanya. So, but I didn't do it. I did it with my arm. I did it with my hand. I did my physical mitzvah. I sat in the sukkah, or I ate in the sukkah. I listened to the Kriyat Torah. I listened to the shofar. But to really serve Hashem, we're being told by the mitzvah tefillin, we involved our intellect, we involve our physical body, we involve our heart. There's a lot to talk about. This isn't the halacha shir, so we're not going to talk about a lot more about tefillin. But I want to talk about for a minute about uchtavtam amuzot betecha uvi she'arecha. All of us have our own pet peeves. I have many of them. So one of them I'm going to share with you. And that is the idea of kissing a mezuzah, touching it, kissing it, which many people fell out of the habit of doing during Corona, and rightfully so. And it's a habit I never got into. You say, "Oh, wait a minute! Of course, it's a mitzvah to kiss the mezuzah when you walk in the room." So it's not necessarily true. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then you have the other extreme, where I have seen with my own eyes. I'm not going to mention any groups of people, but certain types of people, certain individuals, as they walk down the hallway of an office building or a school or whatever it might be, and every door they pass, they're kissing every mezuzah as they pass. They don't go in the doorway. They're just kissing all the mezuzah. Okay. There's really no serious makor for doing it. It's a nice thing to do. I'm not chas v'shalom saying don't kiss the mezuzah, but understand a couple things about this. This is the Rambam in front of you. Chayav adam hizaher b'mezuzah. A person should be careful about a mezuzah. By the way, there's also a misconception that you have 30 days to put up a mezuzah when you move into a place. That's only true if you're a renter. In Chutz La'aretz, you have 30 days whether you rent or buy. In Israel, if you rent, you have 30 days. If you own, you have 1 day. You have to put up the first day you move in. Anyways, so what does the Rambam say about the mezuzah? Chayav adam lehizaher b'mezuzah. A person should be exceedingly careful about a mezuzah. Mipnei shehi chovat hakol tamid. It's a mitzvah that applies to everybody, always. What does that mean? That it's first of all, it's called chovat hadar. It's a mitzvah in the place you live. And it's if you rent, it's your mitzvah, not the one who's renting it to you, but your mitzvah. And it's a mitzvah, it's tadir, it's always there. It's always on your doorpost. And it applies to men, to women, day, night, doesn't make a difference. Now, what does he say you do? Every time you enter and leave your home, you should, literally means you should meet, you should come in contact in not a physical sense with the name of Hashem. Remember his love for you. And he should wake up from his slumber. And his mistakes and his waste of time. Okay, that's a big, tall order to enter into when you walk into your home. Many people do not. I would venture to guess most people don't have that thought process as they enter their home. But what's his idea here? Is the mezuzah should remind you of something as you enter your home. And I'll tell you two things that should remind you of. One that he has here, and one that is not as apparent. On the mezuzah itself, there's the letter Shin. The letter Shin stands for Shin Daled Yud, the name Shaddai or Shakai. Shaddai is the name of Hashem, but it also, according to some, stands for Shomer Daltot Yisrael, the one who watches the doors of Israel, which is one of the reasons that the Shin is there. Pogea b'mezuzah yifga b'yichud Shem Hashem is just even for a moment. Look at it. You don't have to stand there and contemplate. You can, but it's kind of whatever. If you're at that level, that's awesome. But stand there and contemplate Hashem and the love Hashem has for you. This is why I'm mentioning it now more than just saying, okay, you should have a mezuzah while we're doing a class in Tefillah, because part of the first paragraph of Shema is about Ahavat Hashem. And that's one of the reasons the Rambam's also telling us this, about the Ahavat Hashem. But another reason, another thing to think about and consider for Ashkenazim is as follows. There's a machloket as to how you put up a mezuzah. There is the straight up and down, and the other opinion is not an angle. The other opinion is flat. Those are the two opinions. Ashkenazim decided to make a compromise and put it on an angle. Sfaradim have it straight up and down. Ashkenazim have it on an angle. No one does it flat. So the idea of the mezuzah being on an angle is a compromise between two opinions. Therefore, one of the things to think about when you enter your house or you exit your house is the concept of compromise. Whether it's in your house or outside your house, there's going to be times that you're going to be in conflict, hopefully less often than more. But when you're in a conflict, and sometimes, and by the way, conflict is good because sometimes it gets to the root of an issue and to the truth. I'm not talking about fighting and stuff like that. Conflict is not fighting. They have different meanings, achos. But that you should strive for some kind of compromise. No one is always right. No, well, my wife is, but besides my wife, no one's always right and no one's always wrong. There's always room for compromise somewhere, and that's one of the lessons of the mezuzah. Okay, so my pet peeve that I was talking about was all this kissing, this walking down randomly down halls and kissing mezuzot here and there. No, it's not a thing. Okay. We're going to talk now a little bit about the next paragraph. I'm not going to read straight through the whole thing, but I'm going to start going through parts of it in order for us to understand some ideas in this paragraph. But before we do, we want to take a look at this Gemara in Mishnah, in Brachot. I mentioned this in passing a couple of weeks ago when we began Shema, and I want to look at it in person, so to speak. Amar Yoshe ben Korcha. Lama kadma parashat Shema levhayayim Shema. Now remember, we have 3 paragraphs of Shema. We have Shema / v'ahavta, you have Hayayim Shema, and you have Vayomer. The first one of you should love Hashem, the second one Kabbalat o mitzvot, accepting the mitzvot, and the third one is about tzitzit. So he says like this: why is Shema come before Vayayim Shema? And this we already discussed. That the first step is to accept Hashem as your melech and accept upon yourself the yoke of mitzvot. And only after that, which is the second paragraph, which we're about to enter now, to accept upon yourself the mitzvot, the yoke of mitzvot. And why is Vayayim Shema before Vayomer? Why? Shevayayim Shema, the mitzvot mentioned in Vayayim Shema, and the general tone of Vayayim Shema, noheg bayom uvein balayla. The mitzvot, the mitzvot that are found in there, the general tone is the mitzvot, whether we do them by day or night. Vayomer, the pasuk, the paragraph of Vayomer, which is about tzitzit, eino noheg ala beyom bilvad. The mitzvah of tzitzit is only by day. What does that mean? In theory, if I were to change now, go upstairs, I change my clothes, and I'm going to go out. In theory, I could take my tzitzit off, right? Because there's no mitzvah of tzitzit at night. Tachlis, most people wear tzitzit. We'll wear them anyways at night. You don't have to take them off. You shouldn't take them off. It's nice to wear them. Where it comes into play is that some people have a custom in the shul where the chazan wears a talit, doesn't wear a talit for Mariv. And even if he does, you definitely don't make a bracha. You don't make a bracha on a talit at night, which you will see very often if you go to weddings, where the custom, especially in Israel, in most weddings, is the chatan puts on a talit, he makes a bracha on a talit and a shechiyanu. But if it's already nighttime, he doesn't make a bracha on a talit, only the shechiyanu. So there's a logical reason why it's in the order it's in. So let's go back and take a look at just the beginning of the paragraph for a moment, and we'll get into some specifics. Let's move it down a little bit. There. Okay. Vayayim Shema tishmeu el mitzvotai, asher nochi mitzaveh etchem hayom. And it will be if you follow and listen to my mitzvot that I am commanding you today. Le'ahavat Adonai Elohechem u'le'avdo b'chol levavechem u'b'chol nafshechem. To love Hashem, your God, to serve him with all your heart and all your soul. Now, right away, we see something different. It doesn't mention me'odechem. Remember, we said in the first paragraph, it says, to love Hashem b'chol lavacha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'odecha. That's right, with your heart, with your soul, with all your stuff, with all your might, with all your possessions. The third thing's not here. Secondly, this is all in plural. The first paragraph's in singular, second paragraph's in plural. So we have to, I want to look at one word first, and that's the word mitzvotai. Vayayim shamoa tishmeu el mitzvotai. This first line, first red word. It will be when you listen to my mitzvot that I am commanding you, etc., etc., etc. If I were to ask you, why do we do a mitzvah? If your response is, because my father did them, and my mother did them, and their parents did them, and their parents all the way back to Moshe, that's a very poor answer. It's a nice answer, but it's a poor answer. What's the real answer we do then? And in the most parenting voice I can use, because I said so. The reason we do mitzvot is because it is mitzvotai. Hashem says, if you listen to mitzvotai, my mitzvot, I am mitzaveh, I am commanding you. That's why we do mitzvot. Everything else is gravy. The fact that we do them properly, the fact that we do them with the proper intention, the fact that we do it as part of our Mesorah, part of our tradition that our parents did it and our grandparents did it, that's great. But the reason, the bottom line reason we do a mitzvah is because Hashem said so. Hashem told us to do that. Imagine, can't do it, of course, but Hashem can, but we can't necessarily expect something like this, that somehow you can verify 100% Hashem taps you on the shoulder and says, go to the Makolet right now, go buy some milk. Okay, and you know it's Hashem. Why are you going to go? Well, Hashem told me to go and do it, right? So Hashem told us to do it 613 times, well, minimum. And that's Vayayim Shema Tishmu El Mitzvotai. So we don't eat treif and we do eat kosher. We put on tefillin, we keep Shabbat for one bottom line reason, because they are the mitzvot that Hashem commanded us. And by the way, we talked about this before. It's part of how we make a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. He has sanctified us with his mitzvot, v'tzivanu, and he commanded us. That's why we do the mitzvah. Remember, we defined in a very, very small, narrow way, based on Tanya and a couple of other other svarim, that the concept of kedusha meant anything that gets us closer to Hashem is kedusha, is holiness. Anything that takes us away from Hashem, whether it's an aveira, a sin, or something else, is the antithesis of kedusha, the antithesis of holiness. But within that coined expression of a bracha, the Chachamim gave us the key to how we do it, why we do mitzvot. It's because Vitzivanu, Hashem commanded us. Now we're supposed to, it says, La'avat Hashem Elokechem, u'lavdo b'chol levavachem, u'b'chol nafshachem. The Kabbalat Ol Mitzvot. First, remember, Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim, accepting the yoke of heaven, in quotes, is the first paragraph. This paragraph is accepting Hashem's mitzvot. It has to be the ultimate purpose of doing all the mitzvot, again, is to come closer to Hashem and to love Hashem and to develop this love, the relationship between Hashem. But the requirement, or maybe prerequisite, of doing a mitzvah is you have to learn how to fulfill it properly. You have to know how to do the mitzvah. There are certain mitzvot that you will never find out if you're doing right or wrong, if they're private or they're only done in your home. Let's say a person puts on tefillin at home all the time, and they're doing it wrong. No one's ever going to know and be able to point it out. If you're making the wrong bracha on something all your life, and you don't say your brachot out loud, no one's going to know. Okay, so how do you make sure you're doing it right? So you're a very private person, you know. By the way, there's the proper thing to do, whether you're at home alone or you're somewhere in public. You don't have to say it like so the whole world hears you, but you should make any bracha you say on food. You should say it loud enough so someone who's nearby you should say amen. It's important because they get it. They actually, according to some opinions, for the person saying amen, it counts towards their 100 brachot a day also. Anyways, so when a person's to the point where they're very private, they don't want to make their brachot out loud. Maybe they daven at home. Maybe they do their mitzvot very privately. Whatever it might be, whatever person has their reason. The possibility that they're doing something wrong or not doing the mitzvah the best way is pretty good, pretty strong, and therefore it's important to educate yourself. Part of Yahadut, part of Judaism, is learning, because in the first paragraph we already saw this. It says, right? We said V'shinantam levanecha. What does that mean? We talked about this, the concept of repetition. But it doesn't mean just in the way you teach, but it also means in how you learn. You need to be able to incorporate and to learn and put that into your life so that you know that and what you're doing. If you want to learn the why you're doing it, even better. It's even nicer. That's great. Learn the Sefer HaChinuch about the reasons behind the mitzvot. There are many svarim, many books you can get that explain the reason behind the mitzvot, and even mitzvot that are called chukim. the mitzvot that we don't know the reasons, but Hashem has his reasons. There's still books that can help explain some of the rationale behind the human mind being able to understand at least a teeny inkling into what Hashem wants from us in the mitzvah that we're doing. Now, it also tells us, as I just said, we have to love Hashem with our heart and with our soul. How does that add to our avodat Hashem? I mean, when we do the mitzvah, that is avodat Hashem. I just said that. What does the additional level of love do? This is the second time we're mentioning love. First paragraph and this paragraph. So the simple answer is that in this pasuk, we're talking in plural. This paragraph is addressing Am Yisrael, the Jewish people as a nation, that we have an obligation as a people to love Hashem. It's almost like it's part of our national, if we were to have a religious constitution or a national policy of doing something, part of it would be written in there that we have a mitzvah as a people to love Hashem. In the first paragraph, when it says v'avta, you should love Hashem b'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meodecha, with your heart, your soul, all your things, your possessions. That's the individual. We have an individual mitzvah. We have a national mitzvah. But what does that mean in this particular case? Let's take a look. Tanya is a Braita. We learn a Braita is beginning of Masechet Ta'anit. It says as follows: Le'ahavat Hashem Elokeichem lovdo b'chol levavechem. This is something we just now quoted. This pasuk. You should serve Hashem in the plural, all your heart, right? Ezohi avodah shehi b'lev. Now, at the very beginning of this course, this class, the first class I gave dealt with this statement, and now I said we're going to deal with it again when we get to Shema. Now we're on Shema. What does it mean? What kind of work? La'avod means to work or to serve. But it says u'la'avdo, you should serve him, b'chol levavechem, with all your heart. Ezohi avodah shebehi b'lev, heve omer zo tefillah. Avodah shebelev refers to tefillah. V'lo yitpalel b'libo levad. This is the Shulchan Aruch tells us, it's mentioned in the Torah. V'lo yitpalel b'libo levad. We have an important idea, a concept in halacha, that when it comes to tefillah, you have to use your voice. You can't think the words. It's very nice. You want to think about Torah. It's good. There's a partial mitzvah, just thinking in Torah. It's not the same mitzvah because I can prove it. Because if you wake up in the morning, you want to think about a pasuk you heard about yesterday, and you didn't yet say Birchot Torah, you're allowed to do it because it's only hear who read, your only thoughts. It's not the same as saying. By davening, by learning, you're supposed to say the words. You shouldn't just daven in your heart. You have to, means to cut, but you have to say the words with your lips. And you should say the words so that you can softly, that you can hear them. And you shouldn't be loud because it's disruptive to people. If you can't have proper intention when you're davening, by davening softly, you're allowed to raise your voice a little bit. That's only when you're at home, davening by yourself, that you're allowed to raise your voice a little bit. You should not daven too loud in public, in shul, because you could confuse, you could cause a problem for the tzibur. I will tell you, and I mentioned this before, this is a big problem for some people. It's a problem. They daven loud enough that, especially in Shemona Esrei, you got to be careful. You don't daven loud enough that you're going to disturb somebody else's davening. You're going to get them confused, especially if someone happens to be davening with their eyes closed and davening by heart, which is fine. If they hear someone else say something, it's going to throw them off and they're going to get lost. Where were they? Did they say this? Did they not say it? Got to be very careful. Hagad. So the Ramah adds the following: if a person's davening at home and he raises his voice when he's davening, in order that the people in his house should learn, look, this is what you do. You get up in the morning, you daven. Mutar. Then you're allowed to do that. The avodahi shehi belev, the work that's in the heart, is, they say, it is heart work and it's hard work. It means you got to put your heart into tefillah. You have to think about what you're saying. You have to add your own thoughts. You have to put your neshama into what you're saying. Now, you're going to do that every single tefillah? Almost impossible. Every single word, every single line. Is it what to strive for? Is it great? It's wonderful. But if you can try to make a decision that you're going to pick a certain part of your tefillah, maybe a certain paragraph, maybe a certain part of Shemona Esrei, or part of Shema, especially the first paragraph, it's great. Say it a little slower. Think about what you're saying. If you want to say just a tiny bit louder so just you can hear it, if you're in shul, also a very good idea. But it has to be verbalized. It has to be, you have to say it out loud. You can't just look at the words and skim like you're reading a book. It doesn't work. There's a difference between davening in a shul and davening alone. There are people who will tell me that they will daven at home because they're able to concentrate better. Which is okay. I will never judge someone if they want to try to make their tefillah more meaningful, but they're also missing out on certain things. They're missing out on Baruch Hu, missing out on Kriyat Shema, on Kriyat Torah, they're missing out on Kedusha, Kaddish, lots you're going to miss out on. But at the same time, if that's how you daven, and if you find being in shul to be difficult for you to focus and concentrate, okay, that's how you're going to do it. But it's avodah shehi balev. It's the work that's based on your heart. So your heart has to guide you on that as well. There's another way to look at this, that the personal requests that we make of Hashem, and we're going to discuss this when we talk about an introduction, which we will probably get to maybe before Pesach, maybe. An introduction to Shemona Esrei. We're going to see the structure of Shemona Esrei, of how it's built, the three opening brachot, the three final brachot, and the central portion of Shemona Esrei. The central portion of Shemona Esrei is all personal requests, even though it's all in plural, which we'll talk about, but it's all personal requests. It's requests for ourselves, requests for Am Yisrael. Those personal requests, or just turning to Hashem with our own personal requests outside the framework of tefillah, we can look as tefillah shebelev, right? We look at that as the heart davening. The communal tefillah, when we daven with the shul, we daven with the tzibur, with the minyan, that can be looked at as tefillah shebenefesh. That's our neshama kicking in also. It makes a difference. There's an absolute difference for people. Think of yourselves, whatever the situation might be, whether you've davened at home, because God forbid you were sick and you're a shul goer, or you're not a shul goer, and then all of a sudden you find yourself at some inspirational tefillah somewhere. There are differences, and there's no pat answer for everyone. Everyone responds to tefillah differently. By the way, if anyone ever tells you there's a mitzvah you absolutely have to daven with a minyan, now I'm not talking about schools that say you have to come for minyan. I'm talking about that there's a mitzvah you must daven with a minyan. The halacha says yishtadel. You should try to daven with a minyan. I'm not minimizing it. I don't want to give people an out saying, "Oh, we don't have to. We should just try." That's like tzitzit. There's arvit, mariv. Mariv originally was, and we'll get to this hopefully way down the road. Mariv was instituted as a you had the reshut, tfilat reshut. If you wanted to daven it, fine. If you didn't, you didn't. Eventually, Bnei Yisrael, Am Yisrael took it on as a chiyuv, and we do it because we do it. Same thing is very similar to do with tzitzit. You don't have a mitzvah to wear tzitzit at night, but again. And by the way, you don't have the mitzvah to put on tzitzit at all, theoretically. The mitzvah is if you put on a beged, a piece of clothing that has four corners, that can't be without tzitzit. Theoretically, you don't have to. Again, that's called a mitzvah tiyumit, that if you are in certain circumstances, then you do it. It's not, but again, Am Yisrael is pretty much taken it on as a mitzvah chiyuvit. It's beautiful to see. And I saw a beautiful video just a little while before this class today. The explosion in soldiers who've never put on tzitzit in their lives and soldiers who have put on tzitzit before, just how many tens of thousands of pairs of tzitzit have been made in the last few months for soldiers who want to understand that's part of their armor, it's part of their protection as well. Now, I do want to mention one point that people misinterpret. Let's put it that way. What I want to say is I thought of this, but it's not. I know I saw it somewhere. I just don't remember where. And I'm allowed to say that since it wasn't my original thought, it's a great idea. If you read through this paragraph, it looks like if you do the mitzvot, then there's rain. If you don't the mitzvot, there is no rain. And that's what it says. And we can't minimize that. Obviously, that's what it says. If you just look at the English or the Hebrew, we say that, that you'll have rain. The Yored Malkosh, Yored is the first rain of the season, Malkosh is the last rain of the season, and you're going to have crops and everything else. And if not, this middle, pointing again with my finger, like you could see. If you don't do the mitzvot, then the skies will close up and there won't be rain. So it sounds like an if-then clause. You do the mitzvot, rain. Don't do the mitzvot, you're punished, no rain. And yes, okay. But obviously, it can't mean just that. So take a look at this. Look at the phrase when it talks about when you do the mitzvot. It says, Hashem will make it rain. Ve'asafta diganecha. You will harvest your grain. V'tivoshecha, and your wine. Ve'yitzarecha, and your oil. Ve'natati ese b'sadecha. I'll place grass in your field. Livhemtecha, for your animals. Ve'achalta, you will eat. Ve'savata, and you will be satiated. Okay, your. What happens when you don't do mitzvah? The skies will stop, and there'll be no rain. The earth will not give its produce. It doesn't say your ground, your earth. It's just passive. The earth won't give its bounty. All this your is gone. What does this mean? In the first half, when we're doing the mitzvot, there is a relationship with Hashem. Hashem says, I'm giving you this. You're going to have this. This is your land. This is your food. These are your crops. We have a relationship. Hashem's the giver, we're the receiver. You don't want to do the mitzvot? Fine. No problem, says Hashem. There's the earth. There's the ground. There's there's no relationship. There is no your anymore. It's mine. Hashem says, it's mine. You don't want to have anything to do with me? That's fine. Deal with it. So it's more than just you do the mitzvot, there's rain. You don't do the mitzvot, there's no rain. It's when you do the mitzvot, you increase the relationship with Hashem. This is just a continuation, therefore, of the first part of the paragraph of the mitzvot. The mitzvot because Hashem said so, and we want to increase our love with Hashem. We want to increase our relationship with Hashem. So how do we increase the relationship? By doing mitzvot. We have the me, God, me, you relationship. That doesn't happen. You don't do my mitzvot. Okay, there's me. And there's the earth. There's no more your, which is the worst possible punishment that we can have, is the lack of relationship with Hashem. Bezrat Hashem, we will continue next week, finish this paragraph, and go into the next one on Tzitzit. Bezrat Hashem next Sunday night. In the meantime, again, a Shavua Tov, a Chodesh Tov, and again, a follow-up, if you have any questions regarding what I said at the beginning about Purim Suda, please feel free to be in touch. And like I said, I want to repeat what I said. What I said at the beginning is not halacha. It's hashkafa. It's just philosophical. It's how you are going to relate to your Purim Suda and how you're going to relate to the current situation during that. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.